Okay, welcome to DEFN, episode number 33. And today we have a guest from Switzerland, CTO of Exoscale, Mr. Okay, I'm going to pronounce your name, and then only once in the show. Pierre-Yves Ritschard.
Yeah, that's quite close.
Right?
But I think it's a bit tough usually for English speakers to say. So Pierre is fine.
I think in French they say Richard.
Yeah. It comes down to two syllables in French almost.
So how do you say your name?
And my last name is Ritschard.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so I think that's the last time I'm going to try this thing. Welcome to the show. So first of all, maybe a quick introduction. I think you guys know each other already. Maybe it's good to introduce yourself, Pierre.
Yeah, well, I'm Pierre-Yves Ritschard, and I'm currently CTO and co-founder of a small cloud hosting company in Switzerland. In the past, I've worked with Clojure in different companies and been mostly doing things related to development and operations of large systems for quite a while, and that's about it.
Yeah, and we worked together on my first proper Clojure job, and you were foolish enough to give me the opportunity to ruin your code base, which
this is your performance review.
Yeah, we needed. In every company, it's nice to have someone to blame all your problems on.
Yeah, well,
anything breaks, you can always say, "Oh, that's Ray."
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good.
So every time you open some code with anybody else, you just say, "Oh, this is Ray's code. This is shitty. That guy."
I know it's got my name on it, but he told me to do it. Yeah.
Well, he knows enough Git to rewrite the history. So.
Yeah, but that was really good. I mean, it was really good to work on with Exoscale. I think it was really good fun, and I think you guys are doing fantastic stuff with Clojure, which we're going to talk a lot about during the course of this conversation. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what Exoscale is, Pierre-Yves.
Yeah, well, Exoscale is a company that primarily focuses on infrastructure right now. So not exactly the type of company you'd expect to find Clojure at, especially since a lot of our hosting company come much more from the data center business. And we focus quite a bit on software. So what we try to do is to build an infrastructure as a service that's really business centric and that gives our customers, especially customers building applications, building software as a service businesses, the kind of tools they need to be efficient. So that's our niche, and the hill we're ready to die on is helping people building software as a service correctly.
Right, excellent. Okay.
But to be a bit more concrete, I suppose that's a bit vague. To be more concrete, what we offer people are virtual machines, object storage, which is S3 compatible, and network, and on top of that, additional services that make the lives of people building SaaS easier.
What kind of things are there? I mean, are you talking about things like billing and stuff like that, or what other things, or security? What kind of things do the SaaS people really want?
Yeah, what we're currently rolling out is a number of things with regard to billing, with regard to handling transactional emails, watching over a sales funnel. Things that you're going to need to build as a company that steps into the software as a service spectrum. I think in terms of, I mean, for most infrastructure as a service providers, things with regards to security are pretty much a given. That's That's the bar that you have to pass to be in the game, and then how you specialize is what's left.
Okay.
So where is Clojure coming into this picture? Because usually, system level stuff, or what kind of stack do you build? Which part is built by Exascale? Because there are things from procuring the hardware all the way up till providing the front end everything.
So all these parts, basically, we build hardware. We have custom design chassis that are built for us and that we deploy to our data centers. We have people that operate our BGP AS to ensure that our IP space is correctly announced. And we go all the way down to building the JavaScript and soon Clojure script interface that people interact with from the web. So it's a bit wide ranging. But that's the one thing we don't do is build actual data centers. The square meters, power and cooling we rent.
So why Clojure then? I mean, how did you come to Clojure? Because this seems like an odd choice to do, because especially systems level stuff and everything is done by Go or some other.
Well, we started in 2012 building all of this. So back then, Go wasn't a huge option in that space. But this isn't the first company I use Clojure. So definitely I might have had something to do with it. But I did use Clojure for similar things in past companies, and the way I got to it was realizing somewhere in 2006, 2007 that there was not going to be a way around the JVM ecosystem. Back then, especially in the ops world, the space was mostly Java resistance, and it started shifting. For me, the first times where I saw compelling JVM projects was around the time Elasticsearch really became a thing. I guess 2008, something like this. And at this point, we needed to interact with the JVM in the company I was at, and we tried out Scala, we tried out Erlang, which also was a bit up and coming, especially coming from teams who mostly dealt with Ruby and Python back at the time. And we tried out Clojure, and so Erlang didn't work out because of the bad compatibility with the JVM ecosystem. Scala ended up quite frightening for the team, especially in terms of output and in terms of how would I say, inconsistency of code between two people. And at that time, it was a mostly Ruby-centric team I was running, and it really clicked with plenty of people, and ended up being quite a natural transition, and it sort of stuck. Then I used it quite a bit in the next company, and so it was a natural fit for some parts of Exascale. We don't build all of Exascale in Clojure. But it does fit in its niche, and it ends up being the most widely used language. But we don't use it at every level of the stack.
Do you do? Okay. Is it just Clojure, or is it also Clojure script as well now, Pierre?
So right now we use Clojure script mostly for internal tooling, like our internal interfaces, not the single page application that we present to users, but we're switching to that, but at our own slow pace, because it's a big project that was built before Clojure script was even an option, really. But the ecosystem has matured quite a bit, and to manage the complexity we now have in that application, we are starting that project.
What is it currently written in?
JavaScript. It was initially Angular, then some React snuck in, and now it's a huge Frankenstein of an application that's
Okay. Maybe we don't talk about it too much then.
a bit hard to move around, but well, it's. I mean, the ideas that were used in the current app were inspired by what we saw in the Clojure script world, but just a full-on rewrite wasn't possible at that moment.
Sure. Well, you have to justify it as well. What is because I know you said you're kind of S3 compliant. I know that from our history, but what is the story in terms of like cloud hosting in general? Are you able to, like, how do you compare yourself with like Amazon, or are you comparing yourself with other like ISPs? Where's the kind of market niche for Exascale?
Well, definitely in terms of, I think the easiest comparison that can be made, as far as we're concerned, is DigitalOcean.
Right. Okay.
We go a few steps further in some areas, but that would be the most obvious comparison, because DigitalOcean focuses a lot on the web developers, people who want to publish web pages, and they recognize that web hosting today is a bit more complicated than it used to be. You can't just set up some FTP and for people to use a mutualized PHP MySQL server like the 1&1s and the OVH of this world would. But they really still focus on that, most of the time single developer crowd. Even though, of course, eventually they'll try to cater to a wider crowd. I mean, Exascale came out of my history and Antoine, my co-founder's history. I was stepping out of 3 companies where we always had to make a choice between, on one hand, AWS, which was super expensive and provided very, very slow I/O at the time, and on the other side of the spectrum, dedicated server hosting, which, sure enough, were much less expensive, but also brought a lot of problems with them. On this really cheap dedicated host, you have to set up a lot of things by hand. Your neighbor is most likely someone using a botnet, or and the quality of service is what it is. I also, and most people building software as a service also don't need as many services as AWS offers. You're fine with having local storage because your application is itself distributed and most likely horizontally scalable. It's probably fault tolerant at an application level that allows the provider to make a few compromises that to make the whole thing more efficient. It also probably stems from the fact that I'm very modest, and I thought, this is going to be an easy thing, and here we are 5 years into it.
But you've got some pretty good names on your customer list now, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of whom we can't talk about because.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
But CERN is definitely one of the ones we're most proud about, especially when you consider the size of the infrastructure. The fact that it would reach out to us was nice moment. And
very good. Yeah.
I hope we put more of those names on the list in the near future. Or we twist.
But what is the size of your technical team?
We're 15 people today. We're trying to get to 25 as soon as possible. which includes hiring a lot of Clojure people. So if there, we have quite a few spots open in that domain as well. But yes, 15 people mostly focused on. And I would say almost a half and half split between people who are focusing a little bit more on operational maintenance and people who focus more on pushing the product forward. And that's about it.
Yeah, the other thing I was just going to say, a bit more lighthearted really, was when I visited you guys in Switzerland, I noticed that half of the company seemed to skateboard to work. Because the station is on a hill and then you're further down, so you could all kind of skate down.
Yeah,
and that seems like crazy.
I think
super cool, for sure. Yeah.
I think on a normal day, I don't think on a normal day anyone rides a car to work. When the tough winter, kicks in, sometimes we diverge a little bit from our good habits. But
and doesn't someone have like one of these skateboards which can go up the hill as well?
No, Antoine has a scooter, electric scooter. Yeah.
Okay.
Which can ride up your.
Because there are steep hills in Switzerland,
especially in Lausanne. Lausanne is a coastal city, in a way.
Yeah,
it just drops down into the lake. Yeah, but we do have. We never hired for this, but there's a good mix of people who like having something to do on the weekend that's not necessarily computer related on the team, and that's quite nice. To be able to do something that we like, but also keep not live the Silicon Valley dream of doing nothing but work.
So you're not typing Emacs while skateboarding then?
No, that's that I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Because we're coming on to Vijay's perfect question soon, I guess.
Of course. So Emacs or something else?
Well, I never really considered there was anything but one editor. So I'm no.
Of course. I think this seems like a best company to work for. That's pretty much everything.
For a short period of time, all of our network equipment's config management was mostly done from Emacs. It's been used in yes, and actually the first iteration of the company's internal documentation was all org mode with a clever Jenkins script that would. Anyway, it was a bit too Emacs centric at the beginning.
All right.
Okay, this sounds like a perfect company to work for. In Switzerland, everybody goes by skateboards, and everything is in Emacs, so org mode or Emacs. So this is the best.
It's much more diverse now in terms of editors. We have some Emacsers, a few people in VI, and I think still someone who's joining the IntelliJ resistance. So it's
yes.
I think that they'll soon be converted. I think
That's a new hope.
This is what you're talking about the weekend thing, right? I mean, the people who don't use Emacs in the weekend, you train them to use Emacs, and then from Monday they're back on Emacs again. They must be. There is no other editor. But so I was wondering, if you see all the cloud stuff these days, people are going, the serverless is the latest buzzword. So what are your thoughts on this one? Because more and more, application development is becoming like making smaller services, and Amazon, like people providing all the smaller components, the infrastructure, everything is just provided by them. So what is your opinion on serverless stuff?
I view serverless as another iteration of a platform as a service. We went down that route. With Exoscale, we integrated a platform as a service that was Heroku compliant back in 2014. And 2014 through 2016. And at that time, we knew people at .cloud and by proxy some people at Heroku, which we talked with as well, which is why we decided to partner to bring PaaS on Exoscale, because they were saying that something which turned out to be true for us as well, that it was becoming commoditized. That there was something. There would be a point where something that would be a bit like PaaS would be available for any platform, which turned out to be true. But also that most people who use these types of projects tend to either use them to play around, like for really as a test bed, and when they become big enough, they transfer back to infrastructure. I see serverless a little bit in the same spectrum. I think there are niches where that won't be true for serverless. I think typically in the IoT sensor handling stuff, this sort of co-procedure that run on inbound events make a lot of sense. There has to be an answer in that space, and that won't necessarily be commoditized. The only thing I'm worried of, as an application developer and not as a provider, when looking at developing with serverless, is that I remember the days of people being a little bit too enthusiastic about MySQL stored procedures, for instance, and you run that risk of completely being. You lose a lot of visibility when running code in that fashion, and the amount of tooling that you need to get back to the same amount of visibility that you have with standard code is substantial. So I don't see it as a fit for every purpose right now. And I also think that some stacks, especially on top of Kubernetes, will end up being somewhat commoditized as well and available for many providers.
Yeah, that's what I'm. Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm seeing in AWS as well, right? There are these Lambda functions that they kind of advertise as serverless for connecting smaller pieces or ETL. If you don't need a lot of processing power, or if you don't need long running things, then you can connect them with step function. These kind of things that they project for. But they're also coming up with the EKS, like the Elastic Kubernetes service, and running the Docker stuff.
Yeah.
So I think for some of the use cases, in my mind, it makes sense to use the step functions when there is this very low need for high memory usage or something. But as you said, maybe traditional applications. Probably they don't need this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what are your plans for the cloud?
And I think that as soon as you start like pushing too much, the amount of locking that you end up in is quite substantial. But definitely, as you say, like for reacting on events that could happen on a bucket, for instance, like on an object storage bucket, or when receiving an IoT sensor, having a way to provision small workloads would definitely be valid. In the infrastructure space, like every company, we're also moving towards having, as soon as possible, a hosted Kubernetes option. That's still something that's in the works for us, and won't see the light of day for the first part of this year. But that's clearly something that I think will help relieve this fear of lock-in for many customers. We see a lot of customers wanting to go towards higher order abstractions for infrastructure, but be very afraid of the potential lock-in that they would find themselves into. because AWS and Azure and Google tend to throw 100K at you when you start the company, but when the free credit runs out and you bet everything on Lambda, then things get a bit more complicated.
Yeah, and there's a lot of nonsense talk about moving from Google to Azure and from Azure to AWS and from AWS to other places. And people are a bit like, I think people are a bit like, when they choose a bank or a database, they don't move. It's like you're in there for life. It's very rare that people migrate from one of these things to another thing.
Yes.
So they know that they can give away 10K, 100K, and it's the lifetime of that company is they're going to get it back in spades. Yeah. Okay, can we move on to Clojure now, though? Can we do? I don't know how far we're into this. Probably like half an hour in. This is great stuff, but I think we're half an hour in, so just about time to we'll cut all this front bit out. We'll just cut all the first bit out, and we'll just talk about Clojure now. So I know that you're using Clojure for some of the API driven stuff that you're doing, but kind of can you give us like a bigger like picture of where you're using Clojure at Exoscale and kind of like why you chose Clojure for those specific pieces?
Well, at Exoscale, we started out I stepped out of a company where I used Clojure for everything. I previously worked for Paper.me, and at Paper.me, everything was written in Clojure, basically. Exoscale is a bit different in the sense that it's at the beginning we didn't use Clojure that much because it didn't make sense really, and the first thing that made sense was the billing, and billing initially at Exoscale was quite simple. It was a simple batch process that would put in usage records and but it was still this really canonical data manipulation thing where you had this first phase where you would pull, then you had nicely formed map data, and you had to transform it to produce an output, which and it was also the first thing, canonical use case, but also the serious enough that we wanted that thing not to produce bad results, since that's what paid our salaries. So we had to make sure it was good code, and then from then on, fortunately, early enough, we ended up having an issue with it being a batch process, and it needed to move to a more of a stream processing approach. And so a collection of little stream processors. We started a collection of small stream processors with Kafka that still work Clojure here, especially back at the time. Kafka being very tightly bound to the JVM, Clojure was the obvious choice, at least for us. And then it moved on. 2014, I think we started working on Pythos, our first implementation of an S3 compatible object store that we built internally, and again was built completely in Clojure, and a lot of internal tooling. Basically, now our approach is to say that anything that happens at the orchestration level, so anything, if you look at our standard workload is having an orchestration piece that talks to agents that maybe run on hypervisors, that maybe run on storage nodes or whatever, and to have the orchestration layer built in Clojure, and to try and factorize as much as we can from project to project. So that's the niche. So we end up building quite a few daemons. The thing we do most often in Clojure is build daemons. And looking at the library ecosystem out there, I think our key difference is that we deal with non-JSON data quite a bit. We write our RPC clients for for protocols that need to have streaming data packed in binary, and so we had to integrate with NetI quite a lot, and to work with byte buffers quite a lot, which isn't something that you find a lot of support for in the Clojure ecosystem.
No.
Yeah.
It's
a total pleasure to work with those byte buffers. Yeah.
But from the look of the problem, isn't Erlang more suited for this kind of stuff, or what kind of challenges did you face in using Clojure compared to language like Erlang? Because they have like a really nice process to process stuff and binary support in Erlang, as far as I know on OTP.
Yeah, that's. I think that it would have been a great fit. I mean, that part could have been a great fit. But we also tied with a lot of very good libraries that run on the JVM, and that's it. If you look, we use Cassandra extensively. Mm-hmm. If you're going to target Cassandra, it's hard to interact with it. I mean, it's much easier now, but when we started, there was basically no choice. Kafka was the same, and these things we would have much more. We would have had much more trouble sourcing in the Erlang world. So yes, it was a give and take situation. I'm also the whole agent thing. I'm not a huge fan of the unbounded queues mm-hmm. on mailboxes can produce situations which are a bit hard to cope with in the Erlang world. I talk about a situation that's way back in 2007 or something. RabbitMQ was a bit hard to keep in check in production for this specific reason back a while ago. So there's a whole gymnastic that you have to go through when programming in Erlang that we didn't have the skill for. Exascale. I mean, so yeah, we assembled around Clojure with its advantages, but its drawbacks as well. Especially for the process to process stuff, for sure, life's a bit more difficult when you want to implement. How would I say non-blocking code? It's a bit tougher than it would be in the Erlang world, for sure.
Yeah. And how does because one of the things that people complain about Clojure is the performance. So did you find any roadblocks in terms of performance of Clojure? What kind of techniques did you use?
No, not at all.
Anything on that one?
That being said, we don't do a lot of hugely CPU bound thing in Clojure. As I was saying, there's a lot of shuffling data around. The storage components we use are mostly mostly not written in Clojure. So it's not something we run into that much. I think we have this attitude of relying on as few libraries as possible and avoiding, except for core async, avoiding libraries that do code traversal and rewrites what you do. So no, we're really definitely not in performance. Is not where we're taking a hit when we're taking a hit with Clojure.
But I'm guessing what you're saying there, Pierre-Yves, as well, is that according to you, with the asynchronous workloads and the process stuff, the core async is at the core, to coin a phrase, of what you're doing. Is that true? Are you relying very heavily on like the core async abstractions?
Yes, it's still a constant worry of mine if we took the right road, but we sort of bet the farm on core async in a few places indeed, and right now it's quite evident that core async has much more following in the Clojure script world than in the Clojure world. And we run into quite a few oddities in the internals of core async. So the work has now paid off. We're now confident about being able to twist core async in doing what we wanted to do. But it's been a long road, I'd say.
So, obviously having that library has been good, but what specifically have been some of the negatives or some of the things that you've bumped into that have been a bit rough edges in general, or there's around core async specifically?
There are a few things about the semantics of the API that aren't super well articulated in documentation, and that you're likely to, especially with regards to the behavior of chat.
When you've only got 5 lines per method, you can't really articulate everything, Pierre-Yves. Come on, be fair. Sorry, that's a bitch. Yeah.
So yeah, there are things we found out the hard way about the actual semantics of the API, and when you want either to change the semantics or to figure out what's going on, it takes a while to dive into core async code and to understand what exactly is going on. It's not the project that gets the most attention from its maintainer, and so sometimes you sort of feel like that person with the person in Stack Overflow that where there's just a question and no answer. Won't somebody help me out here? And that's sort of what the Clojure's Jira feels to me.
Yeah, we'll get there. I think that's a nice segue into that one now. Because we were, I think before the show, you were mentioning that you had a pull request open or a patch open on, was it the reducers, transducers thing? This was open somewhere in, I don't know, 3-4 years ago now?
I actually had a ticket on core.cache that was closed, I think last week, that I opened back in 2013.
Oh.
No, in 2011. I mean, something completely, yeah.
The cache was finally invalidated.
At that point, I wasn't, it's like...
That's one way to fix it.
It's nice of you, but...
It was literally least recently used, yeah. Yeah, but you, and I think what's interesting about you is you've tried to make contributions to Clojure, which is really impressive, I think. And how have you found that process?
I mean, here it was quite simple. I mean, to be fair, I'm especially with core. The core of Clojure for me works out fine. I would be wary of starting substantial work and submitting it because having seen the exercises in the past from other contributors, it's the chances of your work being dismissed and reappearing a bit later in a different form is a bit too high, in my opinion. I mean, that being said, the patch I proposed, the path to it was we're using transducers quite a bit, which for us are a very key component, allow us to do quite a few elegant things in terms of testing. And one of the functions in core didn't have an RET that allowed you to create a transducer, and the patch I submitted was to make a transducer out of the lower RET. It went back and forth a bit. I think it's now in shape to be pulled in, but it hasn't for 1.9 because it wasn't on the priority list, which is something that's, I mean, I completely understand. It's
sure.
For now it's in our code, and it's actually in one of them. But whenever they put it in. It's
But you'll have a different perspective towards Clojure, right? Because especially you're betting a lot on Clojure, running your entire infrastructure, your company. It's much more because people say, hey, Clojure is a beautiful language. All the developers want to use it. So that's a different kind of complaint. If I, as a developer, I can complain, hey, the process is different or the documentation is lacking. But as a company, the risk is higher. If you see any of these problems with Clojure. So what do you think about that one?
Yes, I mean that's a topic. I think though that I don't think Clojure itself is at risk. Let's say that the language. I mean, let's say that Cognitect goes bust, or Ritschard finds a new hobby. Because if that happens, the Clojure led by Cognitect will die. Because there doesn't seem to be strong enough characters next to Hitch to pick up the work to carry the plate afterwards. So I think what would happen if that were the case, I think a few companies would step up to the plate. We'd certainly try to be a part of the effort. I'm sure Juxt would. Because we were seeing much more adoption in Europe. I mean, from where I'm looking at, anyway. So I'm sure people would step up to the work and try to. So surely, if that were to happen, we'd probably find ourselves in risk-averse
merging the patch.
A workers' cooperative.
Yeah, it would probably be something like Debian, where everything gets argued to death and nothing ever moves, but at least the language would be maintained. And for sure, we wouldn't get a new spec or a new transducers every year like we do today. So I hope it doesn't happen.
We'll keep him going. Yeah.
Yes, I hope it doesn't happen, but I think there would be a contingency plan.
I think there was recently one thread on Reddit Clojure subreddit. How old is Ritschard? And there was a discussion around it.
Well, I mean,
everybody was like, "Oh, he must be around 4,000 years old with his wisdom." And
he's a time lord. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Doctor Who stuff as well. But this is an interesting discussion, because if you think about it, there are movements like. Clojure is together, trying to support different libraries and those things. I think it would be nice more and more members contribute to that one, because that's all said and done. Ritschard, if one person is leading the effort, there should be some torchbearer, so to speak. At some point, he wants to retire. I would assume he wants to stop.
Yeah, or he gets bored, because sometimes you.
Yeah, fair enough.
He gets bored and starts writing a database. He did that already, but.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't you think that, if you remember, Node.js, the original author of Node.js burnt out and then handed it over to some other guy. Now there's been 3 or 4 leaders of that project. So. In theory, there could be, someone from the current Cognitect crew or someone from the community could step forward and, pick up the gauntlet. But it would be definitely. Obviously, these are big shoes to fill. So I think it's possible, but I think there's enough adoption in the outside world now to make that a reality.
Exactly.
No one's going to just think, oh yeah, fine, forget it. There's enough people out in the community who know the language, and it's open source. So, like you say, it'll probably be maintained if nothing else.
Yeah. So, one of the things that irritates everyone that uses Clojure at one point, but is actually an opportunity, is the lack of blessing for an extended standard library. And I think I just stumbled onto Clojure is together, and I think such efforts are really need to be made, and we're likely to actually support Clojure is together quite soon, because sure enough, Cognitect doesn't want to own that space. Cognitect doesn't want to tell you, if you want to do an HTTP request, that's what you should use. But there should still be an answer to what that process should look like, because otherwise, and bringing in, because since we're hiring a lot of Clojure people, we mostly bring people who haven't used Clojure before, and it's tough for them to just step into a language where, if you compare that to Python or even Golang, where there's a single point of documentation where you're gonna figure out how to do basic tasks, and that's hard in Clojure because you're presented with a variety of sometimes efforts that didn't completely go through. Some of them I'm responsible for, so I'm taking my part of the blame here. So, so that
I do agree that we are past the critical mass already. So
yes,
what Clojurists together are doing is really amazing. Anyway, so of course, it's not all doom and gloom. So so you're planning to hire a lot of Clojure guys, or at least trying to think of training Clojure people. So how do you see the market like, and then what do you think of what kind of skills or how much time people will take to acquire Clojure skills?
Well, first of all, in terms of the market, I see a lot more reaction from the Clojure script community, which surprised me. That wasn't my
okay.
But clearly, there's a lot of steam in that area, and we're gonna have less trouble hiring people. I think the fact that we write daemons that sometimes deal with system level stuff makes our hiring journey a little bit harder. It's we have these small exercises that we send out to applicants, one of which is a bit of a yes. It's free.
I would love to do that.
Exercises of yes. One of which entails writing a parser for an obscure binary level protocol in Clojure, and it's
cool.
Totally cool.
I think Ray enjoyed the exercise quite a bit.
Right. Actually, it's proved to be quite useful. It's proved to be quite useful in the end.
Yeah. Because we deal a lot with like mixing the immutable first approach of Clojure with the completely mutable first approach of Java quite a bit, and sometimes figuring out how to efficiently write algorithms which switch from one word to the next isn't that obvious. That's definitely something that people end up doing at Exoscale in some areas of the stack. So there's this.
Cool. So it's much more closer to the lower level programming.
For some of the projects, yes, especially everything that deals with the communications channels, building the non-blocking network servers. That's definitely something that we work a lot with. And in terms of training, what we try to do is have for newcomers have a project ready, like something that's gonna get them in a tunnel where they can incrementally learn, because we tend to have a wide-ranging array of technology, so it also gives a bit of comfort to newcomers, and without trying to drown them into in too much information at the beginning. But we also have now figured out a little bit what our applications look like, how we structure our applications and daemons, and so there's a whole training period around that as well, ensuring that how do we build daemons basically at Exoscale is part of that training plan.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you have significant amount of Clojure code now, and one of the complaints or one of the things that people talk about the dynamic languages is the maintainability. And then, I remember when Zach was here, Zach Oaks was on the podcast, and then he said, the hell is other people's code. So it's very, as long as you don't need to read other people's code, it's really nice. So how do you tackle this one? Because with any tools that you use?
It's funny because I don't tend to agree. When we did that exercise way back, like 10 years ago, between Scala and Clojure and Erlang, that's really what, we read the output of 4 people's Scala code, and we were like, this is Perl and C++ all over again. No one's going to be able to read any code produced not by them. And for Clojure, it was pretty much the same. That's still true today. That being said, Spec has been a game changer for us. The first iteration of our object store is open source. It's called Pythos, and the first iteration was pre-spec and pre-component, and it's a mess. It's we learn.
Yeah, it's the state of the art at that time.
We learned a lot in terms of large-scale production of Clojure code while building it. I'm a bit ashamed that it's open source because it's mostly me. But it helped understand what we needed and that we weren't getting from Clojure, and that specification at the border of your functional specification at the functional boundaries is something that we now rely extensively on. And that gets us much more comfort in what we're building, and in terms of long-term maintainability.
The other thing I like about Clojure, by the way, is that Spec has been in alpha for about a year, and you've been using it for more than that. And it's still in alpha, and yet it's kind of like everyone's relying on it in production systems. I think this is a really strange thing for many languages, I think.
Yeah.
This aspect of the ability to trust the stuff that's in the core library far more than you would trust something from other languages, I think, especially JavaScript. But that's a easy shot, I think. But even Java, I think some of the Java stuff at the beginning of some new things with generics and streams, they just seem a little bit janky sometimes, especially generics. But with Clojure, it always seems like it can be depended on pretty quickly.
That's true. That's one thing we like about the language, is that you don't need to think too much about trusting what comes from the team. And Spec is one of these occurrences of when I saw the announcement for Spec, I was like, but why would they write that as prismatic schema already? Why are you wasting your time on this? And 6 months into it, we're like, yeah. It does bring something to the table that we needed, and okay, I'll shut up next time. So yeah, it's.
Are there any libraries that you want to talk about that you built? I know you have a async Kafka library that you released, and there are a couple of other libraries that you released as part of your company.
I think there's one library that people should use more, which is Unilog. It's like the simplest one I've written, and coincidentally, it's one of the most documented and but basically it wraps Logback and gives you tools to configure Logback from Clojure. And when I started with Clojure, the hardest thing for me was figuring out how to log something. Not coming from a Java background, there was this whole thing about the Log4j properties, and I had no clue what went in there. And any other language that you use lets you set up logging, simply with a few bits and pieces, and Clojure is really suited for this because you expect to give a map of configuration and then things work. Well, that's what Unilog gives you without breaking, without isolating itself in the Clojure world, but interacting, if you do have log4j, if you do have logback, or if there are any other parts of the libraries that you use that rely on log4j or logback, they're going to fall into the same thing. So I think Unilog is quite nice. Kinski is a Kafka library, which I think now is one of the last libraries to support the more recent Kafka releases. We're slowly working towards Kafka Streams support for people building, for interacting with the Kafka Streams ecosystem. We tend to be bad actors of the library ecosystem because we work on these libraries a lot internally, and at some point we dump code. But there's a whole there's a whole lot of chaos underneath where we're like, we have to get this thing out to the market. And so we write a few libraries, a few bits and pieces. And then, when things settle down, then we pretty things up. One thing that moved out of this is Net, our small shim interface to Netty, which is now mostly published in the open, even as we go. It's right now what it gives you is really a good toolbox to work with asynchronous networking, a bit lower than Aleph would, and it gives you no choice in terms of what the semantics for working with async are going to be. It's core async, and that's it. Whereas Zach Tellman built Manifold, which is like this awesome abstraction of what you want to work with in the async world. It gives you this option, and we wanted something that allowed us to be maybe a bit closer to Netty, to interact a little bit more with Netty, and to bet on core async. What we gain out of it is a bit of simplicity, but it was helped right. Looking back, I don't know if we would make that same choice, but I mean, it must look pretty stupid on the outside. What we did gain from the exercise is that we now understand Netty quite a bit. Yes, which we didn't necessarily at the beginning, because you might go into it thinking, it's just async networking. It's basically a small wrapper around the OS's select. Turns out it's a bit more complex.
It's a hell of a project, isn't it? It really is. Yeah.
Well, it's not that much code, which is quite frustrating. It's always the same with the Clojure project. You're like, I wrote this awesome thing, and it's been like 1 year and a half. I'm so proud, and it's like 2K lines of code.
Yeah. But there is always a fine line, right? Because I was also dealing with some Google AdWords API these days. That's like a SOAP client generated by Google Access stuff, which is very interesting. I mean, Google provides SOAP API. That's weird. And then I was interacting with it, and then I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to make an amazing Clojure wrapper around it. And then I started with like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to use the Java interop and then get the thing done. And if you see the amount of thinking I need to do to make it Clojure-like versus just using the Java interop, there is a significant gap. So I'm like, I'll just use the interop, which is quicker and clearer, and I don't need to worry about one more layer of Clojure on top of Java. So this is like a dilemma sort of situation.
For a team, the trade-off is a little bit different. Because for a team, when you write that, how would I say that, small wrapper around the Java, we have an internal thing that wraps the Apache Curator Zookeeper library, for instance. And sure enough, like it's a small wrapper. But having that, and having done that, you've also shown to your colleagues, this is the things that we know how to do with Zookeeper, and we give you like a Clojure way of dealing with it. You don't have to deal with all the how would I say the reflection warnings and everything. That's it's contained in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean the API itself is not a problem, but the data structures that you need to communicate to the Clojure side. That's where all the weird shit happens, because you get this if you're interacting with SOAP API, you're getting all these Java objects from it, and then now suddenly you need to convert everything into a map or def type, def record, and then give that kind of shit back. That makes it like super icky for me. I'm not sure. I haven't written like thousands of lines of code yet, but for me that is where the not the confusion, but the design dilemma comes from.
Yeah, and
because Clojure, you're dealing with maps, you're dealing with these kind of things.
And true enough, the default approach of the initial default approach of the Clojure community was, just use interop. But again, I think for teams going through the effort of providing something that gives you a sense of that looks like Clojure is already a good plus. Yeah.
So I think we talked about lots of things. So by the way, I would like to thank you for supporting Dutch Clojure Day, and second time. Thanks a lot for your support. As you know, it's a free event, and we are really dependent on the sponsors. And it's been growing, and this time we have a lot of sponsors, and that gives an indication that Clojure is picking up in Europe a lot, which is a really nice thing actually,
and quite comforting.
yeah, exactly.
Because we needed a life for a little bit,
and you are hiring.
So are you going to be there as well,
Exactly.
Pierre-Yves?
Yes, I intend to come. Yeah.
All right, okay. So I'll see you there then, because I will be over there also.
Perfect. Cool.
Yeah. Excellent.
It'll be amazing. Of course, I know you submitted a talk as well. We are now sending all the talks to the selection committee, and then hopefully you'll be able to speak about your exascale experience there as well. And I know you're hiring, so are these positions in Lausanne, or are they remote? And I don't know, people who are listening to the podcast might be interested in applying for the jobs.
We're really thinking about restarting the remote hiring effort right now. So we, in terms of Clojure, we're hiring for both positions that focus more on the orchestration layer, so mostly behind the scenes distributed systems work. I would say. There's a lot of work in the storage subsystem, but there's also a lot of work on the cloud controlling, so basically interacting with virtual machine hypervisor agents. There are a lot of things we want to do there, and we now built a nice data layer and API gateway layer also, which give us a lot more flexibility, but it's also more work. So we need the help here, and I think I'm hiring as many as 4 people for these positions, and but we're also trying to, as I was saying, we use Clojure script for quite a few internal projects. And to support the effort that I was describing to help SaaS businesses, get to business faster. Our front end is going to have to evolve, and it's now the good time to invest in the console. So here there's a really nice greenfield project to tackle, which is I'd like to start with 2 additional people specifically working in Clojure script to build that effort. But we obviously already have front-end developers in-house.
Do you have like a preferred stack for the front end these days, Pierre-Yves, or
Yes.
are you still kind of working it out? No. Okay.
No, it's we did a few experiments, and Reframe came out on top. Mostly because this whole reduction of the Reframe is it seems like they took all the wisdom from Home and trained it in something that's where there's a little bit more attention to detail. There's more documentation, there's more support from the community. So it seems like a good bet. It was rather easy to build mock projects with it. And with the agent, I love the dev cards approach, which we need to, because we have this nascent library of components that encode how we want the UX to be, to ensure it's consistent across this rather large and complex application. So yes, it's an ecosystem that gives me comfort and really seems like it can support a long time effort. So I think we'll make that bet.
Okay, good to hear.
Yeah. So for the people who are listening, it's about Clojure script Reframe and a lot of orchestration Clojure work, and you're hiring almost 5.
Yes, I think people? Altogether, it's if you count front end and back end, that comes around to say 7.
Very nice. So I think people who are listening, I think they should just go and check out Exoscale jobs page, and then you guys should apply, because Pierre seems to be a very nice guy, and Ray worked with him, and so that means well, that doesn't mean anything.
We're still talking.
So that doesn't mean anything, but but he seems like a very nice guy, and then doing a fantastic work in Clojure. So
I think we should record an extra special, like, little sponsored thing at the front of this episode, for Exoscale.
Yeah,
I'll do that offline.
Yes, or have a disclaimer about your conflicts of interest.
Oh yeah, that's right. The first fully corrupt show that we've had. We should call this the Trump show or something.
Well, there is no harm in telling people that there are opportunities available. So that's a nice thing. Of course, a couple of other things, that the DCD thing coming up, and what else we want to plug in this week. Pretty much that's it, I think. Of course, Ray is doing another show, because he's becoming slowly the Rupert Murdoch of Clojure media. So he's doing apropos cast, I think.
Yeah.
Some random crap that people shouldn't worry about anyway. I don't want to raise that show on this show.
Shall I give it a little elevator?
What is apropos, Ray? Destroy it. Exactly. Sure, go ahead.
So the idea is that this show is, I think I really enjoy doing this show, because we get to speak to lots of different people, and I think it's really good for the community to hear the people's journey to Clojure, and all the voices and the great people in the Clojure ecosystem. But sometimes people just want to talk about code. Sometimes people just want to see some code and talk about code. So what we're doing with Apropos is actually just talking about a little bit of, like, bits and pieces that are in the zeitgeist of Clojure. And there's 4 people. It's the same 4 people every week, or every 2 weeks, or whatever. And we speak for about half an hour about the zeitgeisty type things. Like, it's Clojure Script main at the moment, which is, really fantastic innovation in the Clojure Script community. And one of the core Clojure Script contributors is actually on the panel, Mike Fikes. He's a really great guy. And what we then do at the end, after the half an hour discussion, we then spend half an hour like live coding in a REPL, and we share the REPL, and it's all broadcast live. And that gives rise, we just do simple exercises or simple code examples, but it gives rise to all kinds of discussions about the various ways in which you could implement this function, or, how can you count those numbers? Is it a functional style? Are you doing things stateful? How do you kind of evolve these little functions? And we've only done 2 so far, but they've been great fun, and I think they've had a lot of good feedback. So, yeah. That was more than a minute, I think. But
yeah. I mean, I would love to endorse the show, but I haven't been paid, so fuck it. So that sounds like a decent show, I think. I didn't spend 2 hours yet on that one, only 1 hour so far. So it's really fun. It's really, it's really nice to see the code, REPL on the screen, and then people trying different things, and it's very, very educational. Anyway, so of course, I think if there are no other topics that we want to discuss, maybe we can roll the credits. Pierre, anything else to discuss?
Not on the top of my head right now.
Okay.
No worries. That's really good. It's been a
then
fantastic
you need to
conversation.
hold your silence until the next show.
It's been really good. I think the kind of stuff that you're doing in Exoscale, like Vijay says, betting your business on Clojure is quite amazing, I think. For people listening out there, and it gives people confidence that they can do it also. That there are people that really believe in the language this strongly, and I think the community sometimes needs to hear those things, that that there is a big set of beliefs out there, and you can do very big projects, not just kind of one-liners at the REPL.
Yeah, that's for sure. Or things on the side, as I hear a lot of people saying, in their microservice architecture, they have this one thing that's in Clojure, but it's more of an oddity, really, because yes, or I mean, yeah, the one thing if there's one thing I'd like to mention is that another good example of this in the open source world is Riemann, which I also help maintain a little bit, even though I'm a bit more I'm a bit less active on that front lately, but it's found its way inside huge companies. I worked with huge telcos or huge providers of technologies for telcos. A Swedish one, not to name it, who relies extensively on Riemann, and the places where you would see that pop up, you'd never think it would end up there. But still, I mean, it has its faults. It's a tool for monitoring that made the choice to have Lisp as its configuration language. So let's say that most of the time in these large companies, the guy or the person that introduced Riemann isn't the most loved person in the company. Sometimes he or she doesn't have any friend anymore.
This is not a good sell, by the way.
but if it's still,
got to turn this around somehow, You've set yourself a high degree of difficulty here. You're going into the diving board. Right, how are you going to turn it around?
But still, it's still there. It's because it's fulfilling a function that's really hard to fulfill in these companies. And I think still, I mean, now there are various tools that are catching up in that system. But and Riemann is started in, I think, 2012 or 2011. There have been tools written in Clojure that really made an impact. And so yes, people shouldn't shy away from the language, even for things that don't seem to naturally fit in its current niche.
Okay, so of course it's been a fantastic discussion. Thanks a lot for Pierre taking the time and spending the time with us and explaining all the things. And again, one more time, a big thank you for supporting Dutch Clojure Day. As an organizer, I mean, it's a bit of a tough thing to organize a free conference, but it's amazing to get your peer support.
Thank you for putting on the show, because not in the tech world, but in another world I've put on shows, and it's not a fun job. It's so, and
well, it is mostly fun.
For the speakers or the attendees, it's nice because you get to see everyone, to have a beer or two, and to enjoy time with the people who share similar interests. So and it makes a huge impact on everyone. So really happy to participate. And thanks.
And of course, I mean, I hope people will apply at Exoscale, and then your team will grow, and then you'll make more and more Clojure in Switzerland. And by the way, I would love to do your assignment. So maybe not this week. Probably I'll get in touch with you, because I'm really curious now. I'm not particularly looking for a job, so I can be very defensive about it, so I can just fail it spectacularly. then I can wing it off like, no, I'm actually not looking for a job.
Things got busy.
But exactly. But I still love to try that one. It sounds really exciting. The kind of Clojure that you're writing, it's a bit off the beaten path, I would say. So I think that's it. That's it from us. A big thank you one more time. And of course, a big shout out to all the people who are supporting us on Patreon. We were lucky to meet some of them at Clojure D. We had a lot of fun there. I gave a talk that most of the people didn't walk out, and Ray entertained people with singing and all that stuff. So we had a super fun at Clojure D. Again, thank you for supporting us on Patreon, and we are hopefully bringing some good entertainment and good infotainment to your ears. And check out Apropos Cast as well, because Ray is trying to plug that show in this show. So please check that out and have fun there. And go and dislike it, and then like this show. So whatever.
I didn't mention it. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just doing my part.
It.
Bad marketing for your show.
All right. Thanks very much.
Anyway, that's it from us. Episode number 33 with Pierre-Yves Ritschard.
Did a good job there.
From Exoscale. Hopefully, we'll see you. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye. So before we start, I'm going to tell you my joke, okay? Because that's...
Yes, please.
You have to be tortured first. Okay, now then.
Ruin the show.
Oh, Christ. Okay. There's a rumor going around, that all of the bots that are hashing on the Haskell type system are written in Clojure. But there's no proof.
All right.